Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Fall 2019 Honors Lecture Series on Suffrage. My name is Dr. Philip Phillips, and I'm the Associate Dean of the Honors College. And on behalf of the college and on behalf of Dean John Weil, I welcome all of you here. For those of you who are visiting, I want to make you aware of the fact that this lecture series is both an event that's open to the public and it's a class. It's one of the required upper division honors classes for students who want to graduate from our college. But what we try to do in this series is to come up with a topic of importance, of great relevance to us, and to invite speakers from on campus and from off campus who are experts in their fields. We try to provide a wide variety of voices. We try to provide a wide range of disciplinary approaches. This semester's series is focused on suffrage, and I want to thank Dr. Mary Evans, who is the person who is responsible for putting together such a fantastic program for us. I think if you've looked at our lineup and if you've attended some of our events, you know the quality of this series. Dr. Mary Evans is Associate Professor, Research Professor of History, and she's one of our honors faculty members, and I'm going to invite her up to the front to introduce our speakers. I'd also like to recognize Dr. Julie Myatt, who is the director of MT Engage. This is MT Engage Week, and so this program is participating in that, and we're grateful to her for being here. We're grateful to MT Engage for helping to sponsor this event and the reception that will follow. So, Dr. Evans.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. It's also voter registration month, and we are having a voter registration table outside. Compliments of the Rutherford County American Association of University Women. So if you have not taken advantage of that, please do so as soon as you can. And I'm here to help you all semester, get you ready for that presidential preference primary on March 3rd. All of our General Assembly members who are joining us today have a relationship with MTSU or represent our county directly. We invited our other county senators, Senator Dawn White and Representative Tim Rudd from House District 34. They were unable to be here today, but we're so thrilled for the folks who are here. The senior representative with the greatest General Assembly seniority with us is our panelist, Representative Mike Carter. He could be Speaker of the House one day. We'll stay tuned on that. Representative Carter, Judge Carter, is a lifelong resident of Ottawa, Tennessee and Hamilton County. He obtained his undergraduate degree from right here in Middle Tennessee State University in pre-law. He was a poli-sci major. He attended the University of Memphis School of Law, where he got his JD degree. And then in the latter part of the 90s, Mike Carter Esquire was appointed as judge of the General Sessions Court of Hamilton County, Tennessee. And he was elected to the Tennessee District 29 House seat in 2012. So if my math is correct, he's currently in his 4th term in the General Assembly representing District 29. Representative Carter serves as chair of the House Civil Justice Committee, as a member of the House Finance, Ways and Means Committee, the Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee, and also he serves on the Tennessee Advisory Commission on Intergovernmental Relationships and the House Judicial Oversight Panel thereof. He's a member of the Elections and Campaign Finance Subcommittee of the House Local Committee. And so, in that capacity, he has direct input and oversight of Tennessee's election laws. So thank you very much, Representative Carter, for joining us in Rutherford County, back at your alma mater this afternoon. We appreciate so much your driving up from Chattanooga to be with us. We also have with us Senator Shane Reeves, who is another Rutherford County resident, and he's a pharmacist and businessman here in town. Surely you all were at one time or another at Reeves' Sane Drug Store on Memorial Boulevard and had a milkshake there before it closed. Senator Reeves is from a Rutherford County family. He's also an MTSU grad. He's been involved with Blue Raider Athletic Association. He got his doctorate in pharmacy, also down at the University of Tennessee in Memphis. He's been active in our community since he returned home to Rutherford County. He served as president of the Rutherford County Chamber of Commerce, president of Leadership Rutherford, Leadership Middle Tennessee board member, chairman of so many other not-for-profits and organizations in our community. And in 2018, he ran for the state Senate in the special election for the 14th state Senate district here in Tennessee, which is composed of Bedford, Moore, Lincoln, Marshall counties, and the eastern, pretty much the entire eastern half of Rutherford County. In the Tennessee Senate, he is vice chair of the Senate Health and Welfare Committee, Senate Energy, Agricultural, and Natural Resources Committee, and the Senate State and Local Government Committee, which, as with Representative Carter's Elections and Campaign Finance Subcommittee of the House Local Committee, is the committee in the in the state Senate from which voting legislation arises. So thank you, Senator Reeves, for coming and being with us today. We also have our own Representative Bryan Terry, who's another of our Rutherford County General Assembly members, currently serving in the 110th General Assembly. He's the representative for those of you who vote in the 48th Tennessee State House District, which is sort of the huge eastern, southeastern sector of the county. He is a member of the Calendar and Rules Committee, a member of the Insurance Committee and the TennCare Subcommittee. He's chair of the Health Committee and member of its Facilities, Licensure, and Regulations Subcommittee, its Mental Health and Substance Abuse Subcommittee, and its Public Health Subcommittee. So why all these health-related committee appointments? That's because Representative Terry is also Dr. Terry, and he's a physician. He received his BS in psychology from the University of Oklahoma, and he graduated from medical school at the Oklahoma College of Medicine. He's an anesthesiologist who carried out his anesthesiology residency at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. He's affiliated with UT College of Medicine, and he practices medicine here in Murfreesboro. Thank you, Representative Terry. Thank you very much for joining us. And then last but not least, our own Representative Charles Baum is MTSU's own Dr. Charles Baum. For those of you who are in the Jones College of Business, Dr. Baum is a professor in the Department of Economics and Finance, where he teaches courses on labor markets, unions, and collective bargaining. He was chair of the Economics and Finance Department from 2008 to 2014. Representative Baum is an East Tennessean originally. He grew up in Knoxville, and he attended college at Wake Forest University in North Carolina. He earned his PhD in economics from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And in the latter part of the 90s, he moved to Murfreesboro, where he took his position at MTSU. And since being here, he's been the faculty advisor of our campus college Republicans. He was elected in 2010 to the Rutherford County Commission, where he chaired the commission's audit committee and served on the commission's budget, finance, and investment committee. And in 2018, fall just a year ago, he ran for the State House in Rutherford County's District 37, and that's just a little bit north of here. So now he serves on House committees Finance, Ways and Means Appropriation, Education, Consumer and Human Resources Committee, and its Employee Affairs Subcommittee. He's a professor who knows the firsthand importance of student voting because he is part of the co-sponsor of the House bill to authorize polling places during 5 days of early voting on Tennessee public college and university campuses with students of a student body of larger than 8,000 students. And Professor Baum organized our panel today, invited his colleagues from Capitol Hill in Nashville to come join us, for which the university and the University Honors College are most appreciative. And being the moderator today is our own provost, Dr. Mark Burns. If you don't know Dr. Burns, if you've been sequestered on the east side of campus, go to Cope and look him up. He has all the time in the world to visit with you. Dr. Burns grew up in Murfreesboro, and he graduated from Riverdale High School, and then he also is a graduate of MTSU. He went on to earn a diploma in international and comparative politics from the London School of Economics and an MA and PhD in political science from Vanderbilt University. He's a specialist in American government and politics, and he joined the MTSU Department of Political Science back in the 90s, and he's served in many capacities. He's published books on NASA, James K. Polk, Tennessee politics. He was Associate Dean of the College of Liberal Arts for a number of years, and then Dean of the College of Liberal Arts starting in 2010. And he was appointed by the MTSU, Dr. McPhee, to be MTSU University Provost in 2016 and 2017. As provost, Dr. Burns oversees teaching, research, and creative activity at MTSU through its academic programs. He is the head of our entire division of academic affairs. And for here, I'm doing a PSA to tell you that if you don't know what the provost is, and I find that sometimes our graduate seniors don't, he is a vice president of the university, and oversees the division of the university that is all of the academics. It's why we're here. It's why you're here to study. It's why I'm here as a professor. There are 5 other VPs on campus. They cover business and finance, accounting, information technology, marketing, communications, advancement, student affairs. Those are all the infrastructure pieces that support the work he does. He's the man who keeps this place running. Dr. Burns has served as president of the Tennessee Political Science Association and MTSU chapters of AAUP and Honor Society of Phi Kappa Phi. And in the community, Dr. Burns was elected for 2 terms on the Rutherford County Board of Education. So he chaired that for quite a number of years and vice chair for some more. So Dr. Burns is a political scientist who has been elected to public office, and thus he's the exact person to lead our discussion today with our members of the General Assembly. Thank you, Dr. Burns.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you guys for being here today. Start off with a softball. Well, they're all softballs. Some are softer than others. Interested in how you came to decide to run for office. We've heard your biographical details, but if you could each in a few minutes sort of talk about your background, what you think prepared you to run for the office that you did, and ultimately why you decided to run. Senator Reeves, let's start with you.
Sure. It's an impressive group of resumes up here. I can't wait to hear what we're going to say. So my family's been from Tennessee for 7 generations. The Reeveses moved to Murfreesboro, Tennessee in 1780. I'm a 7th generation Tennessean, Murfreesboro, Tennessean. My children are an 8th generation. My great-great-great-great-grandfather named his first daughter Tennessee Reeves in honor of the new state that was going to be founded in 1796. So I've got deep roots here, first point to make. So I have a deep love for the county, deep love for the community. Family's been practicing pharmacy for about 120 years here in Murfreesboro as well, so I've got deep roots in healthcare as well. Over all those years, I've had different family members serve in different capacities, so I've kind of been exposed to public service. My dad was involved. I had a grandfather that was sheriff here, so along the way I saw service as a way to kind of giving back. So when I graduated pharmacy school from Tennessee in 1994, came back to Murfreesboro and started serving in a large variety of ways in the private sector, in my church, in the community, in the chamber, business communities, healthcare communities, politics, a number of different ways. Scratched that itch for a lot of years. Looked up at one point in time, I was on about 10 boards, which can happen pretty quickly in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And so it was serving a lot of different areas. And time I got to be in my late 40s, close to 50, I really felt like the opportunity to serve publicly had kind of passed me by. And then our former senator, Jim Tracy, who had this seat for quite a while, came to see me in November of 17 and said, I'd like for you to consider running for state senate because I'm going to take a job with the Trump administration in the special election. And I said, well, how much time do I have to make a decision? He said 3 days. 3 days. So I went home, talked to my wife about it, we prayed about it, talked to my business partners about it, and in November of 17, I jumped into a primary and a general race, got elected in March of 18, so I've only been there a short period of time. So primary reason I did this in the first place is number one, opportunity to give back, truly to serve publicly, and secondly, just have a voice for things you care about. I mean, my background's in healthcare, but my values are faith and family and healthcare and service, and at the end of the day, you got to vote your constituents and vote your what you believe in. So it's a little bit of the voice and the opportunity to serve publicly. But
okay,
thank you.
Great, thank you, Representative Carter.
Well, I was born in a little place called Ottawa. Some of you may have heard of it. Went to school here in Memphis, got my law degree, went back to Chattanooga, began to practice law. At that time, the county sheriff could hire their attorney, just a private attorney, and somehow that ended up with me. I'm not exactly sure how, but it did, and I did that as one of my clients for about 19 years. And as a result of that, I became intimately involved in community issues, We had cases where my wife said if I could just turn on CNN and your face is not on it, I would be happy. Really difficult cases. And I was thrust into that as a young lawyer. I'm not really sure how I got into that, but turned 40 and was appointed a judge. I had no idea what I was getting into, and got a call one day from my brother-in-law. He would always call and tell my new secretaries that it was Governor Bud Visor, and she would fall for it every time. And so one day when I answered, I said, "Jerry, I don't have time to monkey with you, I'm busy." And the guy said, "Well, I'm sorry, this is Governor Don Sundquist." And I thought, that doesn't sound like my brother-in-law. Turned out that it was him. And he said, "We've decided that you're going to be the next General Sessions Court judge in Hamilton County, and I need to call you back this afternoon or in the morning with your decision." And I said, "Well, it might be best if I talk to my wife about this." And he said, "Well, just call my office in the morning and leave a message." And so I went home, and my wife said, "Well, do you want to do it?" And I said, "Well, I'm tired of practicing law. It's busy." I didn't know how to practice without it being 70, 80 hours a week. I was raised in a very poor environment. All my friends were poor. If someone walked in, didn't have money, it meant nothing to me. I needed to represent them if they had a valid cause. And sometimes that would require me to work Saturday nights and Sunday nights. And so I guess I was ready for a break, and so I took the job. I made one very serious mistake. I did not ask what the salary was. And I discovered with my first paycheck, how often do these come? And they said once a month. And I said, wowzer. So I'd taken a 68.5% pay cut, and I literally didn't ask. So if I make any stupid comments today, you'll understand if he's that dumb, then he's pretty dumb. And I was. I enjoyed General Sessions Court because we would have 350 to 500 cases a week. We were at a place where the public actually meets the judicial system. I frequently joke that it's the drive-through window of the judiciary. The public defender wants a child's meal and the prosecutor wants to supersize it, and I get to decide one of 13 issues. And so I'm not much of a bored guy. I need something to keep me stimulated. I became extremely bored with being a judge. I began to know the people and care about them more than they did themselves. I'll never forget my last day on the bench, the day before I qualified for this job, because you can't be elected and serve as a special judge. They would call me down to sit as a special judge. "Jimmy, man, how have you been? Your son that got run over on the bike, did he get okay?" "Yeah, he did. Appreciate you coming to the hospital, Judge." "Well, I'm just glad to know he's doing better." "Ah, you'd never know he's hurt." "Okay, well, Jimmy, I'm going to send it over and let Judge Shattuck. I don't want to put you in jail. I'm not in the mood to put anyone in jail, and I've escaped all this. No, I'd rather you put me in jail." He said that. And I said, "Jimmy, are you still selling crack?" He said, "It's all I know to do, Judge." And I said, "Jimmy, why don't we stop selling crack?" And he said, "Don't know what else to do." He was serious, folks. This was the world he grew up in. That was a little startling to me. So I decided that being a judge wasn't all it was cracked up to be. And you all remember Katrina? Any of you all know? You all look so young to me. Katrina was a devastating hurricane that hit New Orleans. I had bought a boat factory and was building houseboats because I was so bored as a judge. And I built one for a gentleman named Forrest Preston, who owned the largest...
Not Forrest Gump.
Not Forrest Gump. He owned the world's largest private health care concern in the world. And I built him a boat, and he bought it, and he and I began to boat together, and he would ask me questions, and I would tell him what I would do, which made no sense to me at all. The man's worth $8 billion, and he started with nothing. Why in the world would he ask me anything? So Rita came right after Katrina and hit Houston, and we're out on his boat I'd built him, and suddenly the mayor had ordered us all out of Houston. To make a long story short, the next morning I'm in Houston on his private plane. I'm in a fight with FEMA, and we just had a real knockdown, drag-out battle over should a young man on a vent be moved on a school bus. And I said, when you kill him, I'm going to indict you. He said, you don't understand, I'm in charge of FEMA. And I said, well, tell your cellmates that when you get there. We're not moving. This is a safer building than where you're sending us. I'd been talking to Forest President. I wasn't aware that I hadn't turned my phone off. And so he's having a stroke and a heart attack and thinks that his business life is passing before his eyes. A couple of days later, he sends, we can fly in and out, he sends the plane down to get me. I talked to my wife the night before, and I said, you know, changing diapers is a wonderful thing. There's something about this that touches me. She said, why don't you quit? You don't have to work anymore. Do whatever you want to do. I was 57 at the time. I said, I'm going to quit. She called the Chattanooga Times and announced it. So the next morning, I get a call from Forest Press and said, dear God, you're on the front page of the paper announcing your resignation. No, I'm not. I'm reading it. So I hang up and I call my wife, and she said, yeah, I called them. That's the only way to get you out from down there. So you're resigned. So I flew up and held a 30-minute session and resigned and went home. About a year and a half later, one night I get a call from a guy named Gerald McCormick, who was the leader of the House. They had redistricted in 2010, in 2012, and because of the growth in Chattanooga and Hamilton County, we had an additional legislative seat. And my wife, by the way, who I met at Shart Hall, does that still exist here? You still have Shart? Well, it was pretty old then, so it must be, maybe it's been remodeled. We dated all the time we were here at Middle Tennessee, and she's a great lady. She made me give her two promises. Number one, we would never live back in Chattanooga because I had a former relationship there that she was not happy about. And she said no more Chattanooga. And number two, promise me that you'll never run for office. I was the student attorney general here, if you still have those. And so I made her both those promises. The first thing we did when she got pregnant was wanting to move back from Memphis to Chattanooga so she could be near the grandparents, and I was fine with that. And so I told Gerald McCormick that I would not run for the House of Representatives because I promised my wife I wouldn't. And so Gerald and I had a nice conversation. He said, well, Mike, there's a nut going to run. And he's nuttier than you are. And so we really need you to consider this. And I hung up, and my wife looked at me, and she said, you really need to do this. And so I said, my gosh, who are you, and what did you do with my wife? And she said, no, you're 57, you're bored, you're going to get in trouble. They'll run you off, or there'll be some horrible thing happen in Nashville because you don't fit in politics. But go anyway and just give them down the road and have a good time doing it. I think that's basically what I've done. I accepted that position and agreed to run, and then had no opposition for 2 terms. And so we've been there ever since.
Great. Thank you. Representative Baum.
As you've heard, my field is economics, and I teach economics here. And my interest in politics and serving was initially to at least partially work on budgets. I had been at MTSU since 1999, and in 2010 an opening occurred on the Rutherford County Commission, and so I ran for it. I got elected. They appointed me to the budget committee for the commission, and for the next 8 years, from 2010 to 2018, I spent a lot of time working on the county's budget with other members of the commission and the budget committee. And I'm really pleased with those budgets for 8 years. We didn't agree on every single detail of the budget, but I think they were good budgets. We didn't have too many protests about any of them. And it really was a good activity for me because I felt like I was able to take some of the theory that I teach in the classroom and apply it to the real world to try and be of some use or of some service to government. And I was actually able to take things that happened in the real world with government back into the classroom. So the information sort of went both directions. I was able to sort of see to what extent these economic theories that we learn about in the classroom actually work with a government. What are the implications of government spending, government debt? How do you raise tax revenue? What are the implications of higher taxes or lower taxes? And so I actually enjoyed that experience a lot. And then in 2018, the individual who was in this particular House seat was going to run for the state senate, so it was an open seat. And I was interested in continuing to serve, but I didn't want to just become a permanent fixture on the Rutherford County Commission. I felt like two terms was about the right length of time. In fact, this last budget was the first commission budget that I had not worked on. But since I got elected to the State House, I was able to work with a number of other representatives on the state budget. And that's because after I was elected, they appointed me to the House Finance, Ways, and Means Committee. And so we've been through our first budget at the state level. I learned a lot during the process. I'm still trying to bring a few theories to government. I'm able to take stories from government back into the classroom. And so I've enjoyed my first year. And if I can make one comment about our budget, I know this is about voting and citizenship. U.S. News and World Report provides lots of rankings. One of the most common ones people know about are ranking colleges. It comes out about every year. U.S. News and World Report also ranks states on 8 or 10 different dimensions, and one of them is on the state's finances or our budget. And 2 years ago, Tennessee was ranked 5th in the nation in terms of fiscal solvency, the way the state was ranked by U.S. News and World Report according to its finances and its budget. I think the governor and the State Senate and the State House put together a fantastic budget this last year. I could provide a lot of details about that, but I know that's not quite our topic. The result is that after our most recent budget was passed back in May, U.S. News and World Report now ranks Tennessee the #1 state in terms of fiscal management. So we moved up from number 5 to number 1. We'd always been high, but I think we've got an excellent budget. And to me, that's very rewarding to get into those details, see where the revenue comes from, see how the money's allocated, see what tax rates are, see whether we need to adjust them, lower them in some cases. It's always an option to raise taxes. And so that's really the area of government that I've enjoyed serving in most.
Okay, thank you, Charlie. Representative Terry.
Thank you guys for coming out. And before we get started, I think I heard that this was like MT Engage week, and I saw a few yawns out there. So to get you guys engaged, we're going to do a selfie. So everybody smile. All right, good deal. Thank you guys. My pathway to running for office is a little bit different. Really what, oftentimes when they talk about, some people have always wanted to run for office. Some other people, it's what was your get off the couch moment? For me, I was always politically attentive, not necessarily politically active, and really it was the 2012 presidential election. I was on call at the hospital. I'm an anesthesiologist, and we actually got done early, and I felt that election that both parties really had failed my children's generation. My son just graduated. He's a grad student now at Vanderbilt. My daughter is in 5th grade, and that night I was actually at home for the election results, and I went up and apologized to my son. Yeah, I said, my generation has failed your generation. I have not done enough to make a difference, and so I wanted to see how I could get involved. I had no plans on running for office, so it was the following year I attended a anesthesia conference, national anesthesia conference on business and on politics. And I tell people I've got an MBA for dummies. I've probably read everything I can on that, but I just don't have any certificate. And so anesthesia, American Society of Anesthesiologists has an MBA certificate. So I was looking at that, but they also had a roundtable on politics and how you get involved. And I'm at that roundtable, and they said, I'm asking, how can you get involved? And they said, you need to run for office. And I'm like, no, I don't need to run for office. And they said, well, look at this person, they ran, they can get elected. If they can get elected, you can get elected. And I was like, well, thanks, sure enough. But both at the time, both the state senator, Jim Tracy, and the former state representative that was representing this district were running for federal level. And so both seats were going to be open. And so that night, we're actually going to a Penn and Teller show, and I'm having dinner with my wife, and I said, you're not going to believe what they told me. They said, I need to run for office. And she said, well, did you ever think about it? And I said, well, maybe I should. I'll think about that. My background, and I represent District 48, which is the eastern half of Rutherford County, which includes MTSU. And it includes some inner city Murfreesboro, includes a university, it includes a lot of urban areas. We have Garrison Cove, Indian Hills, places like Northwoods. But we also have rural Tennessee, rural areas, Milton, Christiana, Las Casas, that area. And so I have a pretty eclectic background. Like I said, I am a physician, anesthesiologist, but I didn't grow up that way. I'm third generation auto salvage. I grew up in a junkyard family. When I was 13, I was pulling parts off cars. Also grew up with a family farm. We had a horse farm, so had about as blue collar as they come. Now I'm probably about as white collar as they come. Grew up with a farm. I'm also Native American. I'm the only Native American in the General Assembly. So I tell people I'm a caucus of one. So I am a member of the Choctaw Nation, tribal member. Also have a unique background. You guys are probably too young. Not everybody in this room is too young to remember this. The Oklahoma City bombing. I was an intern when that occurred. 2 of my high school classmates died in the bombing. I ended up taking care of some of the children that were in the daycare across the street. I still remember working with the trauma surgeon at the time. We were doing on a gallbladder when the bombing occurred, and we set up a triage down in the ER for patients. I also have, how many people have heard of Moore, Oklahoma? Okay, Moore, Oklahoma, it's the home of, I tell people it's home of Toby Keith and tornadoes. That's where I went to high school. It's essentially I tell people, people relate to it. Murfreesboro is to Nashville what Norman, Oklahoma is to Oklahoma City, and Moore is essentially Smyrna of Oklahoma. And that's where I went to high school. But our horse farm got hit by an F5 tornado in 2013. So it was May 20th, 2013. So having dealt with natural disaster, domestic terrorism, and then having a pretty unique background, I felt like I needed to try to make a difference for my children and y'all's generation. And so that was my get off the couch moment. Felt like I could make a difference, and so that's why I ran for office.
Great, thank you. This panel's about suffrage, so I have 2 suffrage-related topics to ask you about. And students, just as a heads up, in about 10 minutes or so, I'll be asking you to ask our panelists some questions. So if we can get through these 2 quickly, and we might not be able to, but let's try. The first one is about the law passed last year about voter registration drives. I think you all know Tennessee ranks pretty low when it comes to registration. We're 45th out of 50, and actual turnout, we're 49th out of 50. And so the bill last year that put in some penalties for drives that produced a certain number of applications that were incorrectly filled out was passed. And in retrospect, some people who've looked at that have argued, well, that actually discourages registration, or it has that effect. And as you all know, I'm sure a federal judge recently blocked its implementation. And I think each of you voted for that. So I'd like, if you would, sort of to each briefly talk about that. Why do you vote for the bill? Do you have any reservations about it now that it's been, hadn't really been implemented, but it's been on the books for a while? And are there ways that it might be improved? So if I could just get your thoughts on that. Who wants to go first? Representative Terry?
Yeah, that's fine. The voter registration bill, I think it was brought to us by the Secretary of State, and my understanding from the reason that it was brought forth was concern about voter fraud, and that in other counties there were, my understanding, a significant number of incomplete or just fraudulently put forth voter registrations that ended up costing those counties a significant amount of money. And so I think it was an attempt to decrease voter fraud. Now, whether or not the bill actually, accomplishes what its goal is to do, that was the intent behind it. Unfortunately, the sponsor of the bill's not here. Now, that being said, is actually a bill that I sponsored for the county a few years ago, was a voter convenience center bill. And that Rutherford County is the first county to do that, and it was to actually improve our ability for us to get voters out. And this current year, we actually it was so well received and saved like I think $25,000 per election. In fact, I think Senator Reeves, his election was the first time it was tested, and it was actually a good thing that it was tested during your election, and it worked out really great. And we made it where we can actually do it permanently, no longer just a pilot here in Rutherford County. And then this year we passed something where I think 3 or 4 other counties,
Three more
counties were able to do that. So, I think cutting down on voter fraud, but increasing the convenience for voters is something that I've tried to do.
And as a Rutherford County voter, I can say that's been a great thing, the convenience centers. Charlie?
I can make some comments on what I was thinking when the bill came before us, and this is probably what many people in the General Assembly were thinking. This is legislation that really didn't originate in the House or the Senate. It was brought to us by our Secretary of State and our administrator for Tennessee election commissions. The motivation for the bill actually came from the Shelby County Election Commission. They had raised a concern with the state. The concern went to the Secretary of State's office. They said that there had been a large number of voter registration cards turned in that were either incomplete or duplicates. I think in one case a card just had the letter W for a name on it. In other cases, addresses were missing. In third instances, there were duplicate cards, but in different folks' handwritings. The Shelby County Election Commission came to the state and said that 10,000 incomplete cards had been turned into Shelby County on the last day of registration, and that they had been under a tremendous strain to process these cards. They told us that it actually cost the Shelby County Election Commission $200,000 to process these incomplete cards. So they took the complaint to the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of State with the Director of Elections for the state and the Election Commission crafted some legislation that they said to us would help prevent some of these problems. And the legislation was designed to be written somewhat narrowly. It only applies to individuals who are being paid to register voters and who are going to be attempting to turn in registration cards for 100 or more individuals. The legislation wouldn't affect any individual going to vote, even if they turned in an incomplete card. It wouldn't affect the Boy Scouts or college voter drives or church voter drives. These all involve volunteers that would not be covered by the law. And the intent of the legislation was to require professionals who are being paid to receive training and to register, and then to turn in no more than 100 incomplete cards. I guess you could turn in 99, you wouldn't be implicated by the law. The law also said that it would become illegal for an organization to pay someone to register voters on a quota system where you get more money, more pay per person you register. The idea is we don't want to create an incentive to turn in fraudulent voter cards. So I know in my position, when I assumed that the Shelby County Election Commission is a bipartisan group. It probably has some Republicans and Democrats on it. If I had to guess, I would guess it probably has more Democrats on it than Republicans. I don't really know. I didn't look it up. But at their request and at the Secretary of State's recommendation, they said that this legislation would prevent some of these problems, but wouldn't affect any individual voter or any volunteer who's not being paid in voter drives. I also did some research and I saw where some other states have very, very similar laws, and I'm going to give you an example of one state. It's Colorado. Colorado is ranked very, very highly in voter turnout. It's reviewed very, very favorably by policymakers in terms of their voter laws. They get good reviews. And they've got a law on the books that's very, very similar to the law we passed. It says that these professional groups have to register. It says they have to receive training. The folks who receive training are the ones who are being paid to get more than 100 voter registration cards. It does impose some financial penalties if these laws are violated. And so our legislation is really very similar to Colorado's. But having said that, if there's something about the law that is unconstitutional, then certainly I'm in favor of it being reviewed. And if that's deemed to be the case, then I'll certainly defer to the judges And if they feel like it needs to be struck down, then certainly I'm comfortable with that. We really were just trying to address a problem that was brought to us by individuals that are not supposed to be partisan. Secretary of State's not an elected position by the voters. It's kind of like a department head. When they identify a problem and bring it to our attention, we try and do something to address the problem.
Could I add, one of the things you need to know in order to understand this, if I want to rig an election without this law, I can easily do it. What? Sure I can. I can fill out 35,000 applications by writing as one of them. We saw at the committee simply had a line written across it. Well, how could that possibly matter? Because the law in Tennessee is each one will be fully reviewed in the order in which it is received. So if I bring 35,000 in 2 days before early voting registration ends, you'll never get to your legitimate application. That's what happened in Memphis. Somewhere between 2,300 and 4,000 of legitimately intended registered people did not get to vote because they did not get to register, because there was simply not enough time. Now, what about ID theft? If I'm coming to your house and I get all this information, plus your social security number, which by the way you're not required to give to register, but it had it on there. And secondly, these applications referred, these are all professionals. This is not League of Women Voters and legitimate, time-honored registers of people to vote, not like the group you have outside here today that I stopped by and chatted with. These are people who each person is being paid $8 per application turned in, not per application approved. And so if it's just got a mark through it, they still have to take it out, look at it, and under their rules, reject it. And if you've got I think there were about 10,000 of them turned in Shelby County.
On the last day.
Yeah, on the last day. So do you see how that stops all the work? So that allows me to bogus up the results. I go simply into the areas that are not going to vote for me, and I pull those people to register. And I mess their registrations up so that when they go to register, there may be a conflict. I put the wrong address. Now there's a conflict. Well, you registered yesterday. No, I didn't. Says here you did. Why have you moved? I haven't moved. This is chaotic. The only thing worse than not voting in an election, which to me is about the worst thing you can do as an American, the only thing worse than not doing it is allowing someone to subvert your vote and to use it against you without you even knowing it. In Memphis and Shelby County, these groups, there were other groups out there that published these websites that targeted people in certain zip codes. And it would say, vote early, be sure and vote, and it put the wrong location, the wrong dates. And listen, folks, a lot of people pull that up and says, okay, I need to go to Mike Carter High School on Poplar Avenue, and I've got to go Tuesday the 12th. The vote was Tuesday the 7th. You follow me? So this law prohibits that, provides for penalties for that. California's done it, Colorado's done it, New Mexico's done it, Illinois has done it, New York has done it. If this lawsuit against the Tennessee law is upheld, you're going to invalidate about 18 or 20 of these across the nation. I find it really unique that we're worried about getting people registered. We're not worried about getting them the right to vote. Do you see the difference? One is a fraud, one's the American way. Now, I'm all for churches and Boy Scouts and MTSU and anyone legitimately registering people to vote. I'm all for that. But when dark money comes from places that we can't trust and we can't trace, and they pay kids to turn in and we pay them $8 per slip for what gets turned in, not what gets approved, we've set up a system of fraud. This bill is designed to stop that. California charges each one $2,500 and a year in jail. If I do that, it's a Class A misdemeanor up to 1 year in jail, $2,500 fine. In Tennessee, it's a $100 fine if they can prove it, not something, when it went through, I said, guys, this is ridiculous. I mean, $100, come on, no one's serious about $100. We're watching the system be subverted. And so that was my concern, and that's the reason that I support it. It can be used by either side of the political spectrum. If you're a right-winger, it can be used by the left-wingers. If you're a left-winger, it can be used by the right-wingers. In Tennessee, our oath says that we're to pass laws that are good for everyone and not adverse to anyone. The only state in the nation that requires me to vote in such a way that no one is harmed. Have you thought about that? When I first went, I'd taken a judge's oath, I'd taken several oaths, and I read that and I thought, my gosh, I've never heard of that. I've looked, I haven't found it anywhere else. So that's quite a responsibility. This bill is designed, whether it's designed accurately or inaccurately, artfully or inartfully, to protect our most valued right. Only those people who are being compensated and paid commission for turning them in, more than 100, is regulated. Everyone else is free to do as they want to do as volunteers. If that's the cost of protecting our system, then I'm 100% in favor of it.
Thank you. Senator Reeves, you have anything to add on this one?
No, I don't have a lot to add to that one other than it was a response to the fraudulent situation. The bill was brought to us by the Secretary of State, like they said, and it had absolutely no impact. Make sure to hear this, no impact on volunteer organizations. Yeah. That was something that's important to me whenever it actually came in front of my committee. I said, I want to make sure that the League of Women Voters were not impacted by this. If they wanted to go out and sign groups up, it had no impact on them. You know, you said we're 45 out of 50 states currently in voter turnout. But I think we are in registration, but we are moving in the right direction. We are moving in the right direction. I mean, in 2016 or 2018, we had the highest levels in history as far as, or at least in 100 years.
We got about 10 minutes left. I did have one more issue, but which is voting on college campus. Maybe one of our students will ask that. But this is your chance to ask these gentlemen questions. No, Mary, do we have a microphone? Where is Mary? Do we have a microphone? Or are we just yelling out? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Laura Clark's my name. First, I want to thank Representative Baum for supporting the bill that was proposed to establish polling places on campus. I want to publicly give you a thank you for that, because that opens it for students to vote. On the same note of giving students access to voting, and coming off of what Representative Carter said about not doing any adverse effect, can you explain what the rationale is for not allowing student IDs to serve as an ID for students to be able to vote? That has an adverse effect. That has the potential or an adverse effect on student voting.
I just don't see that. They don't have a driver's license?
Some don't.
Well, but you're talking about 1 out of 1,000 or 10,000. When I was a judge, one of the number one things we prosecuted were fraudulent college IDs. A gentleman in Knoxville ran a business because of the drinking age. You have to be 21 to drink. You can go to the Middle East and be killed, but you can't drink a beer. Don't quiz me about that. I wasn't the best judge in the world following that law. But that's the purpose of it. There are as many fraudulent college IDs as there are legitimate. We must protect our elected system. If you want to go to Venezuela or some banana republic, you overthrow the government with guns. If you want to do it in America, you do it by bogusing up the registration and voting. You don't use bullets. We won't put up with that. You do it in a way that appears to have a good reason, and you do it for an evil reason. And that's simply to unduly influence the outcomes of income.
And I think I could add that we do have a couple of unique provisions in the state of Tennessee that are really very seldom used. Maybe they should be advertised and highlighted more so they'd be used more. If you have a religious objection to having your picture taken for an ID, then you can vote without a picture ID. If you are unable to afford a picture ID in order to vote, then My understanding is you have two options. One is you can get a picture ID for free at one of the state locations for the Department of Safety and Homeland Security. These are state departments. There's at least one in every county, and some counties have a dozen, half a dozen in Knox County. You can get an ID for free there, or if you're willing to simply state that due to financial reasons you're unable to obtain a picture ID as an affidavit, I think you sign the affidavit, then you're able to vote without a picture ID. So we do have some exceptions, so even the picture ID is not an absolute rule. And maybe if I had one more second, I thank you for your comments about the state, about the college voter legislation. I am excited about that legislation, so let me say one thing about it to the group because they may not know the details. The legislation from the state would require universities, really any institution of higher education with 8,000 or more students to set up a voting precinct. The idea being that it would be more convenient for students to vote. They could vote there while they're on campus. I think our long run goal would be to get students in the habit of voting. If they get in the habit of voting young, they'll keep voting for the rest of their life, or at least that's what the data suggests, and I think it's intuitive. I believe it. And so it's designed to get students in that habit.
Can I just ask your colleagues on the panel, what do you all think about that bill? And if it comes up for a vote next year, what do you think you'll do? Senator Reeves?
I absolutely would support it, but I would want to have some kind of identification that aligns with the state of Tennessee and what we currently require, the driver's license, or something like you suggested.
Representative Carter?
Well, you all are so far ahead of us. I tried to get Hamilton County in the, what we call the Rutherford County bill, where you get to vote. Essentially, your early voting precincts remain open. It's truly convenience voting. And the voting, the election commission opposed me. How do you explain that? Some people are just afraid of change. But that's the greatest thing we could do. I'm in favor of that. I don't care if they put a precinct on college campus. That doesn't bother me at all. My problem is this. When I was a judge, I had never heard of domestic violence. I wasn't raised that way. I go to court and folks, let me tell you, it's not a problem, it's an epidemic, it's a nightmare. It's unbelievably bad in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Until I knew that, I couldn't learn to deal with that. So what I want are districts available not, let me back up. We then emphasize domestic assaults. We emphasize DUIs. I'm in court one day, a young man walks up, he is just viscerally upset, and he used some very vulgar language and said, "Please dismiss my case." And I said, "Sir, are you a defendant?" He said, "No, I'm the victim. My father's Masonic ring, his .22 pistol, and his knife was stolen from my house. That's all the man left. You've got special prosecutors here for everybody in the world, but nothing for a man whose home was invaded. To hell with you, to hell with this court, I'm leaving." When we pick out someone to make special, we say to two on either side, "You're not special." Do you get that? If we establish the college campus because it's a college campus, what are we saying to the nursing homes? What are we saying to every other group where there are large numbers of people? We're saying, you don't matter. So I want it done by population, by fairness, without regard to who these people are. Make the most people available to vote under the easiest circumstances without regard to quotas or any other matter. That's my concern. I want the most people to vote the most conveniently possible.
Representative Terry, what about this college voting bill?
Well, I mean, for me, I'd have to look at the bill and see exactly how it's written and what's in it. Certainly, I'd support students being able to vote. There used to be one here on campus. My understanding was that it was significantly underutilized. Not as many people showed up there, at least from the precincts that I had here. That we had 22 precincts, and it was one of the lowest.
I don't think we ever had one on campus.
It wasn't. It was
across
in
the
there,
street.
yeah, across the street.
Maybe at Reeves Rogers School.
It was Wesley Center, I think, but it was here located.
Oh,
here.
Wesley Center. Yeah.
And it was underutilized. But when they talking to the Election Commission, and they tried to get it set up to where I think we had 3 or 4 on DeJarnett, and they've tried to centralize that because there were too many localized over there. But yeah, I'd definitely take a look at it. You know, from a student voting perspective, you guys may not be aware of this, but your right to vote on college matters has been stripped. There used to be a student that got to vote on the boards. And when they restructured that a few years ago, and now you have your own board here, trying to get a student to be able to vote on that, there was a student that sent out an email to all legislators, and I was the one that answered the call and trying to get you guys a right to vote on those boards. And I've been fighting for that every year. This year, thought I had the votes in the committee. They had told me going in there I had the votes. Turns out I didn't. So, yeah, it does happen sometimes. But yeah, I'm all for you guys having that right. I've stood up for you guys, and will continue to do so.
I think we have time for one more question, if anybody's got one. Yes, sir.
Me?
Yes, sir.
I have 2 comments and 1 question. My name is Steve Daugherty. I'm a former soldier. I'm a former faculty member here. And gentlemen, first off, I'd like to say as one of my comments, please go back and read every word of Tennessee House Bill 1079, because it does not differentiate, as signed by Governor Bill Lee. It does not differentiate between an individual being paid and not paid to register individuals to vote. It does not differentiate. The penalty is still there. So it still applies to volunteers.
No, it does
Yes,
not.
it does.
It does.
Go back and read it, word for word.
It does not apply to volunteers.
It may not apply.
We have the League of Women Voters here. They were here when we debated it. Are you all barred now?
Yes. I'm Mary Knott, the president of the League of Women Voters. I'm actually next week's speaker. But we're the party that sued that got the injunction.
Okay.
Because it's unclear what paid means. We get grants to register voters.
Well, but yeah, we
And so
discussed
if
that.
companies pay HR people like Amazon and give them a registration, I mean, there's a lot of ambiguity in the law. And this is your
Yeah, that
time.
certainly is not.
But it says, it may not be the intent.
And it
but the word,
describes paid, says all
No,
incidental benefits are not
Read it.
payment.
read it.
read the bill.
Read the word, read it word for word, sir.
Yes, sir. We have a question.
Yes. The other thing is, okay, so you can vote with a photo ID being a Tennessee handgun carry permit with a photo on it. All right? But you can't with the MTSU ID, as we've already discussed. All right? Now, what is the purpose of the photo ID at the polling place? The purpose is so you can say, yep, that face is the face standing in front of me, and that name is who you say you are, and I can look it up on this computer and confirm that, and then I can send you to that booth, okay? So there's no reason the MTSU ID should not suffice to register, to vote at the polling place. Now, this is my question, and I'll read it so I don't mess it up. In 2016, and my numbers differ slightly from yours, sir, but they're close. In 2016, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, Tennessee was 48 out of 50 states with respect to voter participation, with only West Virginia and Hawaii doing worse, and was also the 3rd most difficult state in which to register and vote, with only Virginia and Mississippi making it more difficult. Those statistics are both depressing and unacceptable. Tennessee does not have automatic voter registration, all-mail voting, or same-day registration at polling locations. Tennessee does require registration 30 days before an election, limits early voting to 2 weeks, and requires strict voter ID. And this county has purged 14,881 voters from the rolls, and many of those individuals are totally unaware of that and won't find out until they go to the polls in 2020 and they're told they can't vote. Now, my question is, to any or all of you, do you support opt-out not opt-in, opt-out, automatic voter registration, all mail voting, mail, M-A-I-L, voting, and same-day voter registration at polling places, and if not, why not?
There's a lot there, and we're short on time, so who would like to take a crack at that one?
Well, it just seems to me that if you want to be registered to vote in the state of Tennessee, it's never been easier if you really want to register. You can go online right now on your phone, on your laptop, on your PC. There's a website set up. Anybody in the state of Tennessee that wants to register, go register. You can register at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Sir, what is that website?
GoVoteTN.com.
GoVoteTN.gov, GoVoteTN.gov.
GoVoteTN.com.
Right, so you all are politicians and you know what the deal is. You're elected officials. These people here are not. Okay, you don't know what you don't know.
Well, these two young ladies right here may be registering, I don't know. They could have certainly have while we sat here.
What I'm saying is, why don't we make it easy? Why don't we tell people this information and force feed them? Why do they have to go and dig for it?
You want to force feed people?
Okay, so we're going to have to cut this off now. I think we got the drift of your
Interesting
question.
I would
Thank you.
just say this one thing, if I could.
Sure, you can.
If you're not registered to vote in the state of Tennessee nowadays, either number one, you don't know how to vote. Number two, you do know how to vote, but you don't care. Or number three, you do know how to vote, and you do care, but for some reason you think your vote just doesn't count. But if you want to get registered in the state of Tennessee today, register. You can do it at 2 o'clock in the morning on your phone.
With that, I think there's a reception in the lobby afterwards, which you're all invited to. But before we go, let's thank these gentlemen for participating today.